This is the Boundless Pursuit Podcast, a show highlighting the purity of the experience without limitation. Each week, we'll bring anglers as diverse as the fish they chase, whether it be from your backyard or your bucket list. Freshwater, saltwater, conventional gear, or fly. We're bringing stories and perspectives from fishermen from all walks of life, from across the country and globe. In the digital age, authentic communication and networking is critical, and I'd love to hear from you about show suggestions, potential guests, or general feedback. And you can reach me at boundlesspursuitfishing@gmail.com or at my website, www.boundless-pursuit.com. That's where you'll find the entire collection of written articles, podcast episodes, and media. I deeply value the feedback, ratings, reviews, and support of my listeners, and I look forward to hearing from you. I'm your host, David Graham. Now let's get on to today's episode. I am convinced that adventure fishing, traveling, just going and doing something new and like unfamiliar is the next big thing in fishing among young anglers. I think in the very near future, we're going to see more and more guys going out and doing something totally new and getting further away from home. And you're really already seeing it now. I mean, I'm seeing more guys just breaking free from the typical norms and parameters of fishing in freshwater and saltwater. You're seeing more and more guys that are stepping out, chasing new species in new places and just taking it further and further. And these are the guys that I'm drawn to most. The adventure angler, the idea that fishing pursuits are limitless and expand beyond the same old fish in the same old places close to home. And I really think that that's the premise behind the Boundless Pursuit name. And today's guest really embodies that approach. Riley Voltolina is a college-aged angler that has one focus in mind: big fish and a lot of different kinds of fish. And this is the dude that I've watched coming up on Instagram, seizing opportunities to chase bucket list fish. But what I love is that he's doing it like DIY, stepping way out of his home zone. The guy studies, researches, game plans, and plots courses, chasing fish all around the country, like alligator gar, numerous times down to Texas to chase this fish 1,300 miles away from home with no certainty of success. And he's traveling around Minnesota and Wisconsin, a little closer to home, chasing big lake sturgeon, then setting sights on targets in Florida for fish like goliath grouper, bull sharks, lemon sharks, and just other big fish. The common theme, though, is that he's going further away, gambling on his luck, and trying things where there's just no guarantee for success because he's not chartering the services of a guide. It's all on the back and on the shoulders of his own research and his own ambition and his confidence in his own skill set. And he's rounded out that skill set chasing completely different kinds of fish and different kinds of fishing, from Euro-style carp fishing to casting at elusive predators like muskies. He's chasing bowfin, flatheads, buffalo, salmon, trout, pike. I mean, the guy is all over the place, staying light on his feet and unbound by specific targets. And recently, he was even in Spain chasing the European wels catfish, and what I imagine was probably just the first of many international targets for years to come for a guy like this. I mean, he's on one hell of a track at the ripe young age of 23. I mean, these are the ones to watch, nose down and focused on a course of big game fish. This was a fun conversation with a guy very much worth watching who's got more big trips looming in the very near future. This is Riley Voltolina. Yeah, I like to listen to all kinds of different types. Like, I'll listen to stuff that's not necessarily relatable if it's not the same thing every single time. Like, I want to know all different kinds of fishing stuff. But if it's like the walleye podcast, I'm like, how do you do that? I mean, how do you talk about the same thing every week? I don't know. Maybe I'm not a good enough host. I would struggle. Like, I need there to be variety. So it's something new to talk about. But, I don't know. My podcast, honestly, these tend to bounce around quite a bit. But I just don't really care. You know what I mean? There doesn't need to be a narrative. And honestly, a lot of times when the fishermen are guys who aren't specialists in one thing, it's like if I talk to a guy whose whole skill set is like one specific thing, it's much easier to have like a straight line type of long form conversation where you're going to be like, getting fed all the things like the how, what, when, where, why, the breakdown of techniques. But when it's the guys that are so multi-talented, kind of like how you are, like your fishing is like it's more in line with what I like. Like there's an adventurous element to what you do, but it
Yeah.
also you're also like I don't even know where you're from, and we'll establish that. And where are you? Where are you
uh,
at?
I'm currently in southeastern Minnesota. I go to school in Winona. It's
Okay.
like kind of by the Mississippi River. I'm from Illinois, though. I'm from like the northwest suburbs of Chicago. So I've been bouncing between the two for like the last 3 years.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. Because I like. And then how old are you too?
I'm 23.
Okay. God, you're way ahead of the game. Because I look at your stuff. I'm like, oh, this is a young guy. But then like I scrolled way down. I'm like, but you're not new to this game. Like you've been doing a lot of really awesome fishing. Like when I was 23, I hadn't done anything like that. But I see your stuff where it's like you're catching lake sturgeon to the ice, and then now you're down in Texas catching alligator garden, and randomly you're in Spain catching wels catfish, and then you're like over here in my neck of the woods catching sharks and goliath grouper. I'm like, this guy's all over the place. But it's like, I don't know, man. Like that's the kind of stuff that I like. And what I really like is like your Instagram isn't like throw it in your face style. You know what I mean? Your Instagram bio is like my favorite one that I read. It just like simply says like big fish.
Yeah.
That's it. To the point. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you get straight to the point. And it's like you don't have like this big giant massive following, but to me that's kind of like the point of this whole thing. Like the podcast that I do is that's kind of been a trend. Not always, but I think a lot of times when you're really nose down, focused on like your path and like the next target, you ain't got time for that crap. You know what I mean? And you just seem like the kind of guy when I look at you're very like punctual with these big, like massive target type species. So I guess with a guy like you who's still pretty young, but already pretty accomplished, like, has that always been the case? Like you're clearly one of those big fish type guys. Like where did it all begin fishing wise? I don't normally start my podcast with take me to the beginning. With you, I'm interested in that. I like to know what like some people, stay the course on the sport fish, like typical game fish species. Other people venture off into the obscure. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I guess take me back to childhood, Riley.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been fishing for pretty much as long as I could remember. And I didn't really start out so much on like bass and bluegill and trout and things like that. I started on carp because
Okay.
over in northern Illinois we're pretty much overrun with carp. They're everywhere. It's every pond, every lake, every stream, and they're super easy to catch. I mean, it's not you're not having a Eurofish form or anything like that. You can just put a worm on the bottom and catch a really big fish. So when I was younger, I was always like really into the larger stuff, and I didn't care necessarily about what kind of fish I was catching, as long as I was catching a lot of like really big fish.
Yeah.
So it started with carp, and then I kind of uh I pretty much I did carp for the most part. I did other stuff too, like bass and bluegill, and all of your run of the mill that like everybody does. But it really kind of started to change when I was like at like 9 years old. We went onto the Wisconsin River for lake sturgeon, and that to me was like the coolest thing that like I had ever seen was
Yeah.
catching just like it was only like a 3 footer at the time, and we got like 6 or 7, but I had this like conception that like sturgeon were this ultra rare fish that it was like a once in a lifetime thing, I thought. And we caught, like I said, like 6 or 7 of them in one trip, and I was like, that was amazing. That was the coolest thing ever. And so from there I just kind of just kept with it. Like I said, kept with the big stuff, kept with the variety. My dad works for British Airways, so I actually have always gotten fairly cheap tickets to Europe. So that's how I've been able to get over there, at a young age.
Yeah.
It's semi frequently. So when River Monsters came on, we thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And
Yeah.
my family, I can't even remember the last like actual just vacation we took. It was probably over a decade ago. It's always been some sort of fishing trip, and so we kind of went down that line, following the river monster stuff. And I think I did the wels catfish for the first time. I think I was like 13, and I was like, "This is incredible!" That was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And then after that, we did alligator gar, which was really cool too. And then I did the white sturgeon, and then I think I was probably about like 15 at the end of all that, like 15, 16. And at that point, I was kind of like, "Oh, this like, or kind of just all throwing." This is all just some different iteration of like putting a big piece of dead fish on the bottom.
Yeah.
I feel like I can handle this. I could do this. And we started planning our first Texas trip. That was like our first really big trip. And then from there, I mean, the rest is kind of history. We've just been branching out and doing all kinds of different stuff.
Well, I want to jump more in depth into some of the particular experiences, but just backtracking to the time that you're a kid, like it's funny. Like I feel like that's a common theme with a lot of the guys who are geared. Maybe even yourself and I are probably geared similar. I think you look at the fish and you can kind of tell like, okay, this guy's on this similar wavelength to what I'm doing and what some of the other guys like. I know Justin. I know Justin. So it's like we're all on that same sort of path, but a lot of the guys gateway into that, it's always like carp or gar or something like a sturgeon. And then when you think about like what a carp is to a kid that lives in like the interior United States where you're not near the ocean, like that's your best chance at catching like big fish. Like my first big fish was a carp. It was a big grass carp in my backyard. And then something like a sturgeon or something like a gar that just looks different. Like it's one of those things that like engages the imagination of a kid a little different than a bluegill does. They're reptilian. They have armor plating. Some cases they have big teeth. It's like, it's the type that stokes. I don't know, man. It like plants a seed and some kids maybe get scared. I don't know. It's like, it's one of those ones that separates the two different types. But, I do kind of wonder though, like it was there like somebody you were going fishing with? Like where did the fishing come from? Was your dad in fishing? Like I'm looking for like mentorship or like who was like facilitating this stuff for you? Or were you just one of those wild childs that ran off solo trying to figure stuff out on your own?
No, it was definitely my dad. My dad, my grandpa, and my grandpa on my mom's side, they were all big fishermen. So he was dragging me around. It was on bike rides really where I did most of my fishing for like the first. I mean, from literally as long as I can remember up until middle school, we'd go on like bike rides on the weekend. And every 3 or 4 miles on the bike ride, there was a bridge that you'd stop. You'd catch a couple carp, a couple channel catfish, a couple bullhead. Do another 2-3 miles the next bridge. Do that. We do that pretty much like every weekend for the longest time. But I also backtrack to the rough fish thing. I think there's also like a correlation between people who are into if you grow up into like reptiles and amphibians. Little critters and stuff like that. Then when you see those like gar and dolphin and things, that's cool. That's like a bridge between those
100%. Yeah. I've echoed that one a million times. That was like, I try to tell people all the time, like I was more interested in that stuff first. Like, I don't know, like fishing came second. Just fascination with unique wildlife was first. So yeah, it's that there's definitely something to that. I like the river monsters thing. Like I feel like the river monsters thing, like people like, like I feel like that show gets like hated on more than it should. But like Jeremy Wade and the River Monsters, I don't care what people say, like that show single-handedly spawned more like adventurous, like young anglers than like any other program that's come out. It's just like it spun off in the cyclone of river monsters that swept across the nation. It like, spit out countless young anglers and planted a lot of seeds. And you're right, all he was doing was throwing out a big chunk of meat. But that show, I don't know. I don't know why people like to hate on that show. I always thought it was you have to do what you have to do from the drama side to stay relevant for however many seasons that thing was around. Like that's you got to tie something in there to pull in more than just the angler viewership. So I'm Same thing. A lot of those fish that he caught, I didn't even know existed until I watched that show. A lot, and then
Yeah.
others were already on my radar. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a show about this. But
That was exactly it, because I think right around that time is when we first got like a desktop computer, which would have been like, like 2008, 2009, around that area. And I'd just spend like tons of times on the internet just searching up different species of fish, and just like going down different rabbit
yeah,
holes, because I've seen these things for the first time because I'm like 8, 9 years old. Alligator gar, long nose gar. That was one of the things I was mentioning to you when we were chatting. Is I vividly remember I think your Red River longnose. You're like kind of holding them on the rock like that or something like
oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
I had that I think for the longest time was one of just like a handful of like big long nose gar photos on the internet that weren't hit with a like a spear or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, no, it was just cool seeing all that stuff for the first time. And like I said, the early internet stuff. I've heard you mention on here there used to kind of be more like obscure forums and stuff where you
Yeah.
could kind of learn a little bit of information
Oh,
from
those were
things.
the days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that was most of it. But
That's cool. Like, and then I know that style of fishing can be a lonely world. At least like when I was a kid, I remember like nobody wanted to do the rough, specifically the rough fish. I mean, when you talk about some giant fish, maybe there's some interest there. But like I did a lot of my fishing by myself. Like, I mean, was yours kind of the same way, or did you sort of, you know, find common interest with other guys, like and have a unit of sorts?
my area, I didn't really like have I didn't like have like any like really big fishing friends besides for my cousin. So I could just drag my friends from school out fishing with me and just kind of teach them how to do it. They didn't really have any idea about the species we are catching or anything like that. They didn't know about really rough fish or anything. So it didn't really matter. But yeah, like I said, besides for my cousin, who I really started fishing a lot with in high school, I didn't have to deal with it. It was just I was bringing out people who pretty much didn't have a lot of an idea what they were doing and what the fish was. So and then when I was fishing with Justin a ton, he was same mindset about just not hating on fish, just appreciating them for what they are.
Yeah.
There is rough fish; it's all kind of the same thing. There's just big fish and small fish.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and at the same time, I think there's a lot less. There's still some of it. There's still some people like, I'm a trash fish. You don't want nothing to do with that. And I don't know. I just wouldn't. That was everywhere. Even I don't know, man. 15 years ago, you couldn't get through that. On the online forums, it was like they were like your safe space. Like this is the only forum, the only place I can go to and post a picture of these kind of fish and not get tore up. But
Right.
it's just seems like there's less of that. I don't know what to credit that to, but it seems like nowadays you just see a lot more people that want that variety, which is good. I think young guys, young girls, I don't want to be sexist, young people, they're just more thirsty now for adventure than before. Those things kind of ebb and flow. But I am curious, like you managed to somehow go and do the Spain thing like way ahead of your time. You weren't even probably dialed in on your own home waters at the time that you went and did that. So I imagine you experienced this like, I don't know, it's like I wouldn't necessarily say peak, but you experienced this like major bucket list item very early. Then you come back home, and I'm guessing you could kind of started to like lay the groundwork for like you're like, this is what I want to do. Like I got to have this kind of adventure in my life. What for you like became, I don't know, what would you consider your first real structured like adventure trip that you did where it's like you laid out a game plan and you did the research yourself and you said, now we're going to really go after this in like a smart way, like in a smart, experienced way?
Um, I mean, I had done a lot of like daytime sturgeon trips. I wouldn't call that necessarily an adventure. I think the first really big one that we did that involved a ton of planning and a ton of research was when I returned to Texas in I think 2019. So I had when I had gone there, I think I went to Texas in 2000. The first time I went was 2015, 2016 with Kirkland. And we did the whole boat thing and everything. And then when I came back into shore, I was fishing, down there. He used to be located in this smaller like trailer park area that had a boat ramp and a harbor that you could fish that connects right to Lake Livingston.
Hmm.
And so I went down at the end of the day and I was fishing Lake Livingston, and some of the locals pulled up and they offered us some bait. They asked me how I was doing, and we ended up becoming pretty decent friends. And I met my buddy Donnie down there. So for years I was chit chatting with him, and then finally we got together and we're like, all right, we're gonna send a trip down there. So I got four of my buddies together, or three of my really close friends at the time together. And we just planned it out. I mean, originally we were just going to go down by that little harbor on that cove and set up a tent and fish for 3 days in the heat, and just pray we found bait and stuff like that. But I was almost going to pull the trigger, and my one buddy had a little bit more reason. He's like, dude, I'm not sitting down there in a tent for 3 days. He's like, we're going to be disgusting. He's like, it's a 16-hour drive, but we're not doing that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, we won't do it. So we ended up finding the place we stay at now, which is Outback. I mean, I don't mind saying that, they deserve the business. And that's again, on the north end of Lake Livingston, where the Trinity dumps it. And we packed up. We went down there. We didn't have a boat. We had some really basic gear. We were still following the same, kind of standard at the time, which was just the big steel cable, huge treble hook, big chunks of carp, letting them run and, swallow it and whatever. But
Yeah.
so we get down there, and they had just had like this torrential rainstorm. The lake was the highest I've ever seen it. It was coming over the seawall. And we go in, and we were planning to rent a boat down there. And they're like, "Oh no, you can't rent the boat. It's the water's too high. We're not doing it." And we're like,
Ooh.
"Okay." So I go to text my buddy. Like my buddy had sent it down to the coast. He mixed up the weekends we were there, so he wasn't there. So we didn't have a boat. We didn't really have anything, anything to do other than sit here. I mean, my whole plan involved fishing kind of the first 2 miles up from the lake and that area. That's kind of the area I had seen with him the trip before. So we were like, all right, I guess we're going to make the best of this. And we had no idea, if we were going to catch fish there. None of us expect to catch fish there because it's real shallow. It's only, 6-7 feet deep. There's essentially no current. I didn't see any fish rolling. There was no reason for it to work. And, I threw out a rod, and I think literally before I put it down, it got thumped, and I could feel it, going down the current a little fast, and this weird pumping action. And I'm like, I think I got one on here. And I set the hook and brought him in. He pretty much swam straight to the bank, flopped around a little bit, and then, went dead weight. We jumped in the water and pulled it off. And we're like, oh my God, we did it. We're like,
Yeah.
We just drove 20 hours and, we caught a gar. I'm like, we did it. This is cool. And then we proceeded to catch nothing, for the next day because it started raining. So we went almost 48 hours without a fish altogether, but the rain killed off at the end of the second night, and we ended up getting into some fish. And then the last part of the last day, we ended up catching something like 15, 16 alligator gar, including my personal best at the time. But yeah, that was definitely like the first we did it. You know what I mean? Like the big trip, a lot of money involved with it, a lot of time. That was it.
Yeah, yeah, I love that kind of stuff. Like when especially young guys like gamble, because a lot of people just don't want to do that. Like I'm not about to get in my car, drive 20 hours down somewhere with a bunch of uncertainty. The bait stores don't exactly sell gar baits. Like you have to be which I'm real curious about that too. Like I've had some situations out there where I did similar things and road tripped it a long way with empty coolers, hoping that I'd find bait. And like that's like your first hurdle. Like if you don't get bait, your trip's over. Like you're done. You can't even begin fishing. So I guess like your history as a carp fisherman probably came in handy. But like, how are you sustaining? I mean, you just get lucky and there just happened to be carp right out in front of the camp, or did you like run down? I know that dam is down there, a bunch of bait down there below Livingston Dam. But where were you securing all the bait from?
So at that first trip, we were cast netting tons and tons of shad, and we were getting some big ones because a big fish, a really big fish will eat shad. I mean, hell, I think I caught my 7-footer on piece of, I think, yellow bass. I think yellow bass, the legal one,
Yeah.
about that big, you know. So it didn't take a lot, but it was a big problem on later trips too, because the shad
Yeah.
aren't always there, and you want to be using kind of like a big fish size bait. You don't want to be sticking with the shad. So around Lake Livingston, there are all kinds of concrete and like rock shorelines, and even there's a couple areas on the river and stuff like that. So that's always a good spot for buffalo. And I'm kicking myself. I really want to end up setting up the carp rods over there sometime and catching them. But we'll
Mhm.
just cast them. I mean, you walk these concrete walls. The buffalo, the common carp, they're up. They're in the cracks. Sucking out whatever little bugs and algae stuck in there. You can usually go down and within 35 minutes have as many buffalo carp as you want. You'll see their
Yeah.
backs out in the water, but now that I've been towing the boat down there more recently, what we'll normally do is we'll go up into the river, kind of just follow the drop off, and you'll find big schools of buffalo. I mean,
Yeah.
schools of buffalo 10, 15 feet tall. I'll mark them on the down scan, and we'll just throw nets on top of them, and it only takes one net. You'll come up with 5, 6,
Nice.
big buffalo carp, and you have bait for 2 or 3 days. So
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, well, when I lived a little closer, I mean, we would just catch them locally and then like put them on ice and then drive in with bait. I'm like, heaven forbid we show up and don't have bait. And,
right,
I know guys that have flown their bait out because they
oh
didn't want to show up
yeah,
not having, like, geez, dude, like you're probably going to catch something, but yeah, that's funny. I remember, there was one year, the bait was always just such a problem sometimes.
yeah, yep.
Um, and I hope this might be beyond the statute of limitations, but I brought a gill net one time. Oh, that was a mistake. I put a
Oh yeah.
gill net out in the Red River, and within 10 minutes, that thing was full of 50 longnose gar. Oh, it was
Oh yeah,
pure hell trying to get them. I
right.
got like one shad and like 50 gar that were hopelessly entangled in the net. I'm like, that ain't happening. But
Yeah,
yeah, dude, I love that kind of stuff. It's just like, you don't see a lot of people that are willing to go that far for a fish they might not catch in conditions they're not used to from the bank. Even the first year, I love that because I know how hard those fish can be to catch from the bank. So you pretty much have to like marry yourself to one spot, just hope for the best. But that's cool. Yeah, I seem like I see the same guys in your photos every time. It's like this. There's
yeah,
like that guy Cole, who I think I'm friends with on Instagram, and then
yep,
Randall
yeah.
and
And the last one's Alex. Yeah.
the dude with the wild hair. I don't know. It's like yeah,
Wild hairs Randall. Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, that's been my crew for the last, like 6 years. We do pretty much everything together. Any
Uh,
big trip is going to be
yeah,
with us, unless I do it with my dad and brother, something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. That's
But
cool. It's always cool when you get a good team together like that. So like the guard trips, I love that. It's they've been cool. Those were always the ones that I was following real closely. I'm like, damn, this dude's out there getting the alligator gar. I saw the photos from shore, and then some of your return trips. I didn't realize you towed your boat all the way from down there. That's another
yeah,
level of commitment.
yeah,
So
it's only been a recent like last 2 years because like you're saying from shore you got to marry to a spot, and that area I'm at, you know, fish aren't just sitting there. They seem to build up into these big loose schools that will
yeah,
maybe pass you for a couple hours. So, originally the first few trips we got lucky and the conditions were kind of keeping them around us for the most part. But in recent years, we've gotten more or less rain coming in, and it'll move them. I mean, and there'll be essentially nothing in front of us. Maybe we get
hmm
one or two, but you can see them rolling. You know where they are.
yeah,
Uh, and we actually started with a dinghy. We had an inflatable dinghy that we motor back and forth, and our friend's family down there sometimes would be around to take the boat and dump us off on some like little island or shoreline up there. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was, it's pretty much unavoidable at this point that we need a boat down there because, you get the wrong conditions one day, or it's just the wrong conditions for the trip, and that spot's pretty much just busted. So,
yeah. Jeez. So then, so I know you've done the gar trip several times, and then you return. I mean, like, what do you do? What are you chasing mostly around your home waters? I mean, what's kind of like
um,
your near home fix? You know what I mean? You got to get some kind of fix on big fish. Is it mostly the sturgeon?
It's pretty much mostly the sturgeon. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say exactly where I live. I'm pretty rarely fishing, especially these days. Like in Minnesota, my exact area here, we've had a couple good flathead trips and stuff like that in my vicinity. The Mississippi's kind of, at least up here, and without having a boat to be really running the river all the time, because I don't have my boat at school. Um, it's really seasonal, it's conditions based and stuff like that, especially flathead. But I'll travel mostly to central Wisconsin and up a little bit north into Minnesota for the sturgeon. But around the house, not a whole lot I do. It's just a lot of dinky sport fishing that I maybe don't even post about, because it's just kind of for fun, time killing.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny how that works, because I have the same thing here. Like, so I live in Naples, but it drives my wife crazy because I'll drive, like, when I finally get a day to go fishing, I'll drive like 3 hours away. There's
Yeah,
phenomenal fishing right near me, but for whatever reason, I feel like I need to go somewhere further to do something different. But
right.
yeah, I totally get that. It's like I could just fish right down the road from here. But I end up, unless I want for like some of the exotic species around here, I got to drive to the other side of the state. But has that gar trip become like an annual thing? It seems like, yeah, I thought I saw some murmurings of maybe a return trip in the near future. Has that become kind of like one of those, I don't know, those things that you want to do every year?
Yeah, definitely. I want to run Texas every year from here on. I mean, I love that trip. I
Yeah.
know you like that stuff too a lot. I mean, that's just so cool. I mean, that the whole 9 yards. The fishing style, the fish, the area. I mean, we got a ton of friends down there. At that campsite we hang out with, we'll have like 20 people, sitting around drinking and barbecuing with us while we're fishing for gar. It's
Yeah.
it's 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 just such a fun trip overall. Um, but yeah, I mean, Texas and Florida are the annuals, and every year we're trying to sprinkle in something new and cool.
Yeah.
Some big trip.
Yeah. It helps that the alligator gar is such a, I don't know, man. Like that's one of those ones that's just like near and dear to the heart. I like really, I think I'm gonna go back maybe next year. I've got like all this like ambition to do these big travels, but like that is one fish that, like, always it calls me back. Like I need to go back and experience that fish, because such a phenomenal animal. It's like a great tragedy to see people that'll fish their whole lives not even attempt to do it. Makes no
But
sense. But
yeah,
when you go back down, I mean, I guess you made it sound like you're kind of going back to the same area, or do you have any ideas to be like, man, let's try it like this other section? Like
I
let's try south of Lake Livingston, or further up north near, I don't know, just south of Dallas or something. I look at like the whole Trinity River all the time on like Google Maps. It's so fun to look. There's just
yeah,
not a
I
lot of
know.
access. There's
Yeah,
nowhere to put in. So
right.
you
Uh,
looking at maybe, I don't know, trying different zones?
yeah, I'm going back. I got kind of a risky trip coming up. I'm going back the first week of March, which is kind of right on that edge
Oh,
of,
geez.
will it be warm enough? Will it not? I think if the water gets over 60 degrees, I'll be okay, and we'll catch some fish, especially in that area I'm in, because there's a lot of flats and stuff around there. A lot of stuff I
Yeah.
haven't even checked out. So like most recently, some of our top producing spots, especially for big fish, had big flats. I mean, there's areas where you'll have these 6, 7 foot fish coming into 18 inches of water, 3 feet of water, and just hanging out and feeding there.
Yeah.
So I think it could be a good area to fish, in the spring. Traditionally, our earliest spring trips have always been pretty good in that area. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm just gonna have to. If they're not there, I'm gonna have to run around. I wanna get a little bit more into the southern stretch below Livingston, because
Yeah.
we have always avoided that area, because it kind of, like, if you look at the posts and stuff from that, it looks like there's a million fish. It looks like a lot of them are smaller.
Yeah. That's
It
been
looks
my
like,
experience down there. I mean, they get
yeah,
big fish too, but I've just, a lot of times, like if I am like, you get people who reach out to you and like, oh, I want to go do this. How can I find them? I normally will try to direct people to the southern areas for accessibility, likelihood of encountering a fish. But I'm always like, you may not catch the big one though. But But yeah, I've caught them as far south as down near Corpus Christi. I lived in Corpus Christi for a while, like ways South Texas. But yeah, even down there, I could only find small ones. Although you see these giants in that Choke Canyon Reservoir.
Yeah,
I just,
I've seen that before. That's pretty cool. I mean,
yeah,
I've never
that
been there. I've seen the posts.
I don't understand it. It's sort of like this random lake that's not fed by a giant river or anything. It's not a very big lake, and I mean, it gets hammered by like the bow fishing guys, but it still has a lot of big fish. I mean, I don't know. It's relatively small lake. I guess it's big enough, but yeah, man, that's a cool one. But so what about I have to ask about this one because I'm going to Spain in April myself. So I'm like, oh man, like when I saw that you had done that, I didn't realize that you'd already been there, like
Yeah.
almost 10 years before that. So I saw that y'all had gone down that the same crew of guys went to Spain. So I don't know, man, tell me about that trip. Did you kind of go back where you'd gone before? Like what was the approach on that one? What's the connection there?
Yeah. So the first time I had gone, I went to one of the lower, well, I guess kind of the mid lower sections of the Ebro River in Benny Fallet. Um, so that area is kind of that's more of a flowing river. It's pretty cool. It's surrounded by a decent sized hills and mountains and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's faster. It's shallower. I think the population of fish there is technically a little bit younger because they were stocked up and they're kind of working their way down. Um, compared to like Mequinenza and those areas where that's more of just like a big reservoir. Deep water, slow moving, basically lakes. But the first time we went down there, we had a guide. We were going out in the boat and we were floating like, chunks of bait, live fish, stuff like that for him. It was really cool because, I mean, that
Yeah.
river came up like 10, 15 feet and we were fishing tree lines. I mean, these things in the winter, I guess, or in the spring, they were going up there, tangling up in the bushes and the trees and stuff like that. You just float a carp or a sucker along those edges and they take the floats down. That was cool. But he had mentioned to me during that trip, he's like, yeah, if you go down, some guys just come here and fish the yard. I mean, they catch, I think he said up to like 17 fish a day back there. And I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah.
And my dad ended up going down there one of the mornings, and he had a huge one on. He broke it off, but
Ugh.
so I was looking into a place to go get them, and I figured I'd just go back there. I mean, I liked that. It was nice and secluded. The river's beautiful there, and the number of fish down there is really great too. But I mean, you still have the opportunity to catch a really, really big fish. I think maybe the very, very biggest ones are more kind of on those upper stretches. But I mean, just for sitting there and just hammering just numbers of fish. We figured that was the place to be. And not to mention, it's kind of like a nice confined area where you're having a lot of bait going in. It's a very specific hole and everything. So that this spot that fish are feeding right here, they're
Yeah.
not going too much further. Because I was kind of talking about it before that the fishing over there, it's not like North American catfishing. It's just like carp fishing, really. But
That's funny. That was like one of my main points that I'd written because, like, I mean, being that I'm about to go there and do it, I have all these questions, and I had sort of planned to do more of a DIY thing, but then this opportunity came up with this group of guys, and so won't necessarily be DIY, but I kind of wonder, like, I'm like, it's a catfish. Like all catfish are catfish. It can't be that hard to catch them. I was curious, like, what are they like? Can you relate them to something like a flathead or a blue cat? Are they like temperament wise or behaviorally? Are they even the same thing?
It's hard to explain. They kind of just take qualities of all of them and meld it together. So you kind of just have like this pelagic, like blue catfish characteristics where they're floating around, they're like a flathead where they're predatory and they'll go hang out in, snags and stuff like that. But then they're also just like a channel catfish that they'll just eat anything.
Yeah.
So you're basically just taking all the best characteristics of North American catfish and jamming them into one fish that gets, 250 pounds. I mean, they're a blast, but I mean, it's so crazy too because you can go at them so many different ways. I mean, I think you said you're doing the artificial stuff. You can bottom feed, you can live bait, you can dead bait. I mean, you can probably throw hot dogs down and do just fine catching. To be
Yeah.
honest.
That's what I was
But
wondering because like I look at the rigs, like a lot of the European guys. It's just like I look at it, I'm like, that just seems so complicated for a catfish. Like it just really almost. I'm like, there's just no way. Like, I mean, I'll show up with a, you know, big old piece of lead and a big old circle hook and a chunk of meat on there and just throw it out. Like, will that work? I'm like, I don't
that
know, but
you probably do fine, honestly.
yeah. People are like, oh,
The
this
only
is the pressured section. You got to watch out. These fish are very cunning. I'm like, I've just never known catfish to be that way, but
no,
maybe.
maybe the big ones, maybe in those upper pools, but um, I mean, I see that. I've seen that too, where they'll tape up their hooks and stuff like that for like the electrosensitivity or whatever. And I agree with you. I think that's ridiculous. Um, I I don't on the Ebro. I don't know about the section that you're going to, but a lot of that river they have pretty strict regulations on the fish. So
Yeah.
that's why you always see the European guys go in there with the pellets and stuff like that. Because I had, when I was first planning the trip, I'm just like, seeing all the pellets and everything, and like you said, chunk of meat. I'm like, we'll just go catch chubs or chubs in the water, because they got the
I
big.
know.
So I'm like, why would these not eat half a chub on the bottom? But once we were going to the regulations, it's like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, you can't take anything from that section of the river we were in. You couldn't flip a rock and throw a crayfish on the hook. I mean, everything's got to
Yeah.
stay in the river. Um, so that's where everyone goes with those. We use squid, which is I'm pretty sure okay. Because the regulations are a little weird with like no seafood, no aquatic life or something like. I'm
little do
not.
you little
I
do
was
you
hoping
know
it would
you're
probably be
wanted.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
right.
like an
Yeah,
internationally wanted man. You have no idea.
yeah, yeah.
The
No, they're
Spanish
waiting for me
police are
when I
looking
go
for you.
back. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So I don't know. It's cool. I loved that experience. I mean, just kicking back and you know chumming out bait and catching fish. That was cool. I mean, that was another thing too. We went through so much bait. I didn't believe it. I had talked to a guy who had fished there before, just asking him how many pellets we should buy. I had no idea if we're supposed to be really, really heavily chumming these fish up or if we're,
mhm.
throwing a couple handfuls, something like that. And he was like, buy as much as you can afford, essentially. He's like, he said, get a bag a day. And I think the bags are 25 kilograms. So we ended up going through, I think, somewhere around like 300 pounds of pellets the entire trip, just constantly throwing them into the water. Oh, that's they jump. That's another thing. I don't know if I mentioned that. Catfish come up and jump.
Oh, geez, yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's the
no,
other thing. Their fight is what I'd always wondered about. I see the videos. There's like a big arc in the rod, and they're, if they're fighting them vertically anyway. But it's like you look at a fish that's built the way that they're built, and it's just like, it's built like the Arapaima maybe similar. They're like sort of like built like a big slug. Like that just doesn't seem built for like athleticism. Like, what is the experience like? I mean, you know what I mean? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm in for a rude awakening, but I look at an animal like that where it's like they got a big head and then the rest of it's just this tapered, like slug body.
it,
Like, what are
it's
they fighting like?
it's a really strong fight. I should say they jump in the water. They won't jump on your line. You'll just if you're in a spot, you'll see them rolling. But once they're on the line, I mean, it's just a straight dig. It's ultra powerful. I mean, one
Oh,
one of my favorite parts about them is just the keel they put on your rod when they take.
yeah.
A lot of like my flathead fishing and stuff like that. I like to run a bait runner and kind of feel out a bite on flatheads and stuff like that. But those Wells catfish, man, they put something in their mouth and they just break away and your rod goes straight down every time. Um, it's a really powerful fight. It's a fairly long fight. I mean, they weren't coming straight in. They look like the kind of thing that would just kind of S turn all the way, but I mean that
Yeah.
tail's pushing a lot of water. I'm not going
Mhm.
to say they have the world's best stamina, but that's a lot of pulling force. They're going to go straight at the bottom as long as they can, and then once they come up to the surface, they're just going to kind of undulate their tail against you pretty much the whole way in, and do a couple quick dives and stuff. It's a good time. I like I said, I really enjoyed the fight.
Yeah, that was interesting because at first, like when I was thinking about going, I was actually more eyeing like France I got
Yeah.
like a
Yep.
connection, a buddy there. I think that their regulations are a little looser. Pretty sure
Yeah.
you can fish at night. You can fish with live baits, dead baits, and then like Spain, I started reading. I'm like, oh, there's too many rules here. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get bogged down by rules and regulations. I ain't got time for
Right.
laws, but yeah, the lure thing will be cool. That's one I'm really looking forward to. Kind of the same thing, man. It's like you get these like target, especially if you're predominantly a freshwater guy. There's like certain landmark fish you want to experience globally, and that's like every continent has like its champion. That's the way I've
Yeah.
always looked at it. I don't know, corny as it may sound. It's like there's like it's like every continent or every country seems to have like its like that's the one here, and you want to
Yeah.
like knock all of those down. So that's kind of like the European giant. But yeah, that's one I'm really looking forward to. But another one I'm interested in though, like we mentioned some freshwater fish, but like the Florida trips that you've done. How many times have you come down here? Has that become like another one where it's like we got our Texas trip? Oh, this year it's like season 3 in Florida. Like, are you doing that regularly as well? Like, what have your Florida trips been looking like?
Yeah. I mean, well, my cousin's family got a place down there a few years ago, so now we've got a spot to be, and that's going to be like a hopefully 2-3 time a year thing.
Yeah,
Ideally, I like to get down there for like a long weekend, whenever people have the time for it. But yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I'll tell you, it's really intimidating. I mean, you guys have so many different species to catch, especially in the saltwater. It's like a big transition and stuff.
hmm
Uh, but yeah, like I said, that's going to be that's definitely an annual thing at least once, 2 or 3 times. I think our next one is in early April. Um, I think I'm hoping to get a little bit more into the tarpon and stuff like that, because we're
yeah.
starting to feel a little good on the sharks. I'd like to actually land one because we hook them, but hooking them's half the battle, right?
Well, I saw one where you lugged a big old like you know mature bull shark into the boat with you. I'm like, damn, he brought
Yeah,
that thing in the boat. Like, put it
yeah,
in there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Got the hook out though.
Yeah. The tarpon, you know what? I hate to say it. I have not even, like, I've been here for 6 years or something like that. I forgot how long I've been here. I've still not caught a big tarpon. I like feel ashamed to say it. I just, I don't know. I need to commit to the time. Just it's a lot harder when you're like a land based guy or like I have a
Right.
canoe. Like I'm a big, into the canoe fishing, but I don't know. I gotta get that one done. But yeah, tarpon here. It's like there's like the obvious ones. Like, what are your main targets when you come down here? Do you have like here's the primary targets in saltwater is like what tarpon, shark, and what
I
Goliath? Seeing you do the Goliath grouper thing.
Yeah. So at first it's been sharks. We're doing sharks. Um, it, that's pretty much been the whole thing. Now we're starting to get some sharks. So like I said, it's starting to get kind of maybe we can start looking at some other stuff. He's got the boat down there now, so I mean the ceiling's just
Yeah,
get higher. Now it's like, oh, they can really do a lot of this stuff. Although I want to kind of try to keep it focused on the inshore species and stuff, and really kind of tear those out, because I feel like in order to, before I go out and catch like a marlin or like a yellowfin tuna or something like that, I want to get the levels below that done before I just make that
yeah,
huge jump into that stuff. Um, so I've actually personally, funny, I've never caught a nurse shark.
yeah,
I've seen 2 or 3 dozen of them get caught. I still haven't landed one, but yeah, it's definitely it's nurse sharks, bull sharks, lemon sharks, and Goliath grouper are our favorite ones. So
yeah. Yeah, that's funny. The nurse shark will come before too. There's some areas, especially as you get closer to the Keys, where it's like, it's pretty much the only kind of shark you're gonna catch. But
yeah,
yeah, I agree with that though. I get the same way here. Like I got all these trips planned to go do these things in other countries, and then like I'm like I haven't caught a muskie yet. Like I need to catch like there's things in America, so I really feel like next year will be more. Let's focus on some of the American targets that haven't happened yet. It's like I need it.
right,
I'm getting ahead of myself. Actually, the lake sturgeon. You've probably heard some of the. That's like been I constantly say like that's one of the main ones that I want to catch, but all in due time. But yeah, man, your Florida ones are always cool. Have you done any of the freshwater stuff though, like the exotic
Well,
scene?
yeah, not yet. I mean, we, we get down there and everyone's just so like, tunnel vision on catching a shark or Goliath grouper.
Yeah,
It's hard for people to take the couple hours, even though we totally have the spare time to go do it when we're not going to. Pretty sure we're not going to catch a shark. Um, but it's just hard. It's hard to break away from that and go do that. Now, like I said, none of us, we're not really big sport fishing guys and things like that. Although I do really like the snakeheads down there. I think that's a really neat one. I'd love to get the snakeheads and I'd love to get the clown knifefish. And I'm sure during that I'd probably bump into a peacock bass just to see them.
yeah. Let's just. You're already kind of ahead of your. Yeah, you're ahead of the game on that. Like everybody comes down here when they think the exotics, they think the peacock bass. And I'm like, I'm telling you, like that is like the lower tier. I like them. I mean, I like them a lot. Don't get me wrong, but if I could have my choice, I'll take a snakehead any day over the peacock bass. But I mean, realistically, if you do your shark fishing at night or even your Goliath fishing at night, you can. I don't know how much y'all really want to be fishing around the clock, but in that whole region, it's like a fun challenge. Like you can realistically catch like a peacock bass, a clown knifefish, a snakehead, a shark, like a Goliath grouper, and a tarpon in the same 12-hour period, 24-hour period.
Right.
Like it can be done.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
very like it's not really all that hard. Now, are y'all doing most of your Goliath stuff out of the boat, or are you looking for like the land based options?
Our last trip we did pretty good off the boat for them, but normally we've been doing them down at the Keys. We're going like out to like some of those Keys bridges and doing
Yeah, the
doing the sharks.
bridges. Yeah.
That's where any of the land based sharks I got on the sand are from. Um, but we want to eventually start getting out on the beaches and stuff like that. We have kind of accumulated the surf gear to go out and do that. It just hasn't happened yet. You know what I mean? Um, but one day we'll get around to it. Maybe on the next trip. But like I said, I really like the land of turf.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe on the next trip or the one after, I think we'll finally go out and do some of that freshwater stuff because the one guy, Randall, he's like an amateur herpetologist and he's always dying to like just
Oh,
get towards the Everglades
that's
and
a
have
whole other
fun.
thing down here. Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah,
its own monster down here. Yeah. I've gone and done some of that. I still want to do the Python thing. I've had a couple of guys on here that do that a lot. I keep telling them like, oh, man, I got to do the Python thing one time. Like just to, you want to immerse yourself in the culture of the Everglades. Not that should even be part of it, but it is
yeah,
now.
right. But it is, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's just it's part of I've done the chameleon thing. I mean it's fun. It's something different. It's like the wild wild west down here, but yeah, so that's cool. What are some of the other trips? I mean, now we're talking about like future things. Like you're a guy who I'm sure has like a game plan that stretches out a few years. Like, you know, in the next 5 years, I want to go here, here, and here. I want to catch this, that, and the other. Like, what are some of the not so distant ones like that?
Yeah. So
Future
my
travels.
my next like big one, or I should say the group's next big one, which I'm hoping to put together this year, is white sturgeon. We got everything else going in North America for the most part. I'd like to do white sturgeon. But we're planning to go up to British Columbia. It's a lot of research, a lot of looking around. We got the gear for it in Florida, and then we have some setups that can maybe handle them. Maybe not a 10-footer, but kind of
Yeah.
that 7 foot mark. I think we could survive. But yeah, we've been looking at taking like flying into whatever that is, Vancouver or something over there. That might be wrong, but then going up to British Columbia and fishing that Chilliwack area,
Mhm.
renting like a camper or something. There's a lot of shore access. There's a lot of spots around there that I think you could sneak in and maybe do it. Um, I don't know though, because that takes a lot of planning, especially going onshore somewhere like that where there's really I found some forums and stuff like that where people are kind of chit chatting about that stuff, but really I don't know yet. But we were also looking at the Columbia and Portland, and it's one of those fish where it's maybe not necessarily hard to it's not necessarily hard to go set out. and catch one, but really to figure out where's your best bet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're leaning more towards the DIY stuff. DIY
Yeah.
stuff generally, not going there and getting on one of those big giant jet boats and running up the river. And so you're looking to scope out. I've looked at that too. Like that just looks like a whole other monster up there from
Oh,
land.
yeah.
I saw one where it was like downriver and the guy was like practically in the city below a bridge, like catching them in like rather urban area, big ones too. I mean, that's where the
Yeah.
giants. That's where the giants. You've caught white sturgeon though, haven't you? Have it?
Yeah, I did. I went out and did the whole jet boat thing before. I've seen the area once, so I know a little bit what I'm getting
Yeah.
into, and the bait situations and stuff like that. I mean, I guess the bait for the white sturgeon doesn't seem all that difficult. I mean, maybe if I have to resort to salmon, that might be kind of the hardest part. But I've seen guys in Idaho and stuff like that use just like crappie, trout, pretty much, whatever. Oh well, yeah, like I said, that one's up in the air. That's the closest one. We'll have to figure that one out slowly throughout this summer. But I really want to get down to St. Louis and do blue catfish. It's like the one thing close to home I really haven't hit hard yet, besides for the muskie. But yeah, what else? I think Nile perch too, Murchison
Oh
Falls.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty doable one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you can get a guy to do the whole 9 yards. I was looking, there might be some situation where you can hire a skipper and they just bring you up there, dump you off, let you run around, and then drive you back to wherever. But again, I gotta look into that, and that's way down the road. But
Yeah, I've researched that one quite a bit too. There's definitely ways to DIY it. They find creative ways to charge you for every little thing is what I've seen. It's
right,
but like you can basically pay somebody they'll take you to the falls and you just hike down in there. It just seems like that's where they catch the little bit smaller ones. Like the big ones seem like they're further downriver. But
yeah,
yeah, and then like the Chilliwack area, like did you ever think about just going like there's commercial fish markets everywhere over there? Because
yeah.
that's what I
Or
was looking at. I'm like, they got fresh
think
caught fish on ice. I mean, that can't be that hard to do. But yeah, the Nile perch one is one I was looking at pretty heavily. That's an interesting one, and it's because like it goes beyond just the fish. It's like such a spectacular area. The wildlife around there is insane.
yeah, it's really really incredible.
Yeah,
I'd love to do the Amazon thing. You did that looks amazing. I think I'm gonna save that one for a little bit longer because that's to me like the holy grail. Like that's the one. I feel
yeah,
like that's kind of the capstone trip. Maybe that and gooch catfish. Those are like okay, like a lot of big fish. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah.
that's kind of outside what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. It's like all of like a work in progress, like moving yourself towards that. It's like, that style of fishing. I'm like convinced that that's like the next big thing in fishing for like the guys coming up. This idea to like go beyond. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm seeing more guys doing it. I really feel like that's going to be the next thing. But yeah, I've looked at all these things too. That the goonch one just seems so difficult. It's like,
Yeah, it's a big it's you're banking on a lot. I think whatever the trip, the minimum is going to be 14 days, and it doesn't seem like they always come back with like 100 pounder. I mean,
no,
I don't.
it's what
But,
I've seen is just the operations. I'm not at the point where I would want to trust them. You know what I mean? I don't feel like
yeah,
the best effort's going to be put forth. It just seems like they're always going to like the same hole. And like, all right, this is the spot. We're going to sit here and commit to this one bend that we fish every single time. And there's like resident fish here that have been hammered and hammered, and we're never going to
yeah,
try something new. Like, I know those things live in other rivers. Nobody's like pioneering it though. Like nobody's out. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I just you see those like grainy cell phone videos of like these little guys like hiking around with a giant catfish on their back that they pulled up. And like, why is there nobody like what? There's got to be some operations looking at where this guy's at. These like obscure areas. But yeah, I don't know. That like adventurous style of fishing speaks to me. But yeah, I was just kind of interested in what was coming up next. So you're looking at doing Texas next month and then Florida the month after that, kind of a quick turnaround. What about the rest of the year? Pretty much going to stay closer to home, or
For the closer to home stuff, I mean, ideally I would be thinking about ice fishing, but
yeah,
it's not happening this year. I mean, we this would be coming up on kind of the back half of the season. This is when the pike and everything would be going on. And the sturgeon too would probably be doing pretty good right now, but hey, there's no way I'm walking on any rivers, probably for the rest of the season. I think it's done. But I mean, looking forward, up here in Minnesota, we've got like a pretty decent pike run in spring and open on the Mississippi. And like, I'm not like a big pike guy. But every spring I kind of get on like a kick for them. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
kind of, they're the first thing that turns on, the first thing to fish for. And so you're like, oh, I'll go do it. And I start getting into it a little bit, and then I usually set it down and, the sturgeons start biting or something like that. But yeah, that's with the immediate future. And I mean, I'm always going to be doing sturgeon, always going to be doing flathead. I'm hoping this year I actually get on the flathead run a little bit more. We kind of didn't do it last year because we had a bunch of other trips kind of messing with that. But we ended up getting onto some decent fishing around here for those flatheads. But yeah, I mean that's the immediate, really really close stuff. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I'm not. Yeah.
Now, I mean, you're getting around a lot. Did you? And you said you're in school now, or you're still in school?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you studying?
Ecology.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
You planning to somehow tie that into fish related stuff when you get out?
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I've kind of been planning on being a pilot for a while. So once I get out of this, I might be, shipping over to flight school. Maybe somewhere in Florida. I don't really know yet. I got to start figuring that out.
Yeah.
In the next few weeks. But we'll see what happens. But yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you managed to squeeze that in. My college experience wouldn't. I don't know. I was trapped like a prisoner on a military college campus. Couldn't get away.
Yeah.
And when I did, I dang sure wasn't going and catching some of these awesome fish that you caught. But yeah, dude, that's what that was the thing, man. I've been watching your stuff for I think a few years now. So I was like, man, this guy is really getting after it. And the other guys that you're in close with, y'all got a good thing coming. So I'm like, these are some ones to watch. I can't wait to see what you're doing next. But I know we mentioned earlier you don't have like, I don't know, I don't think you are really super invested in like Instagram and social media stuff, but people that want to see these big fish, these cool fish. I mean, you got great photos. You got like awesome stuff. Where can people go to like see your things? Instagram. I don't know if you do YouTube or any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's just my Instagram. I mean, as much as I'd like to have videos and stuff like that. I mean, I'd love to have more videos for myself. It's so hard to film them. You don't really want to take away from the experience. You know what I mean?
That's been my struggle. Yeah.
Yeah. So, every once in a while we get somebody had a phone out and we get a cool, quick clip of something. But, yeah, that's it. It's just, it's just my Instagram. That's the only place. I don't have a Facebook, no YouTube, no nothing else. That's pretty much it. And it's really, I've just used it as a tool, mostly to meet people, especially recently, meeting a lot of, cooler guys and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a really good networking tool. And so where is it? Right, it's just your name, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just Riley Voltolina _fishing. That's it. Well,
I gotcha. Okay, I can throw that up on the screen, and it's very simply and honest in the description. Big fish.
Yeah, that's all it's about.
Yeah, I love that. Well, do it. I appreciate your time. I gotta hop off of here. Apparently, I had a very important package that they tried to deliver. I don't know if they dropped it at my door or they might have taken it away, and I have to pick it up tomorrow. But yeah, man, I appreciate your time coming on here, and I look forward to seeing the next things that you catch, especially just next month. That's awesome. You got a big trip coming right around the corner, so I won't have to wait too long to see what you get into next.
But all right, man. Yep, I'll talk to you later. Thanks for having me, and I hope you have a lot of good luck with everything you got coming forward too. And good luck in Spain and everything. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for that.
Yeah, dude, for sure. And maybe I'll reach out when I try to knock off that lake sturgeon in the future. Who knows? And if you come down my way in Florida, And if you want to try to catch, I don't know, maybe a grouper from the land, you get much better pictures when you catch them from the land.
Yeah, that would be cool.
We can always do that too. Pretty easy. But
cool.
All right, Riley, I appreciate your time. Take it easy.
All right, yep, I'll talk to you later, man.
Yep. Thank you for listening to Boundless Pursuit. Tune in each week as we bring stories and insight from uniquely talented anglers and outdoorsmen. And if you enjoyed this show, I want to hear from you. Be sure to leave a 5-star review, as this is going to drive the growth and exposure of this show. And if you have feedback or guest suggestions, I would love to hear from you. And you can reach me at boundlesspursuitfishing@gmail.com. For all other collections of media and contact information, please visit www.boundless-pursuit.com.